One very common river animal, especially where you've got a fair bit of limestone, is the freshwater shrimp, sometimes called gammarus. Its scientific name is gammarus. This is a shrimp, and in fact this freshwater shrimp is in fact evolved from a marine shrimp. So it's invaded freshwater in the last few thousand years. This is a typical adult. Notice it's sort of pale grey, so the grey shrimp imitates it quite well. But notice one other point, and that is that there's a little orange spot on this body, of the body of this animal there. That orange spot is caused by a parasite. The parasite results in that orange spot. And you will notice that in a lot of flies that we fish, we put a little bit of orange in. Now the orange is not really to imitate that. The orange is because fish respond well to orange in slightly coloured water. So that's gammarus, the freshwater shrimp. I rate an imitation gammarus as good as any general bug for general fishing. Fish love shrimps. One interesting thing is if you catch a trout or a grayling that's been eating shrimps, when you spoon it and look at the contents of its stomach, you'll find that the shrimps are orange, rather like the shrimps that we eat that have been boiled from the sea. Just one quickie, notice the size. That would be a size 18, perhaps a 16. The biggest, that is quite a largish one. It's a good centimetre long, but with the curve, it's probably about a size 12 or 14 hook. Here we've got two of the most important insects in rough, rocky streams. They're two caddisflies. Now caddisflies normally have cases, but these are two caseless caddis. This one's called Hydropsyche, this one's called Rhyocophila. And they are similar but different. Rhyocophila is usually some shade of green. Notice the very soft green and brown body, and notice at the end you've got two little tails which end in hooks. This crawls around amongst stones, amongst moss, and is highly carnivorous. And it's got quite powerful jaws on the head, and it will take nymphs, Diurnurus nymphs, Baitis nymphs, other caddisflies to that size. It will even eat trout eggs. Now that is quite a reasonable size one. It's about 1.5 centimetres long, equivalent perhaps to a size 12, perhaps 14 hook. Now this one is Hydropsyche. Hydropsyche, you notice, doesn't crawl very well, and it's an awful swimmer. That normally lives underneath a little net that it spins for itself, in which it traps its food. It too is carnivorous, but notice it's a sort of brown colour. Very rarely is this green, and very rarely is Rhyocophila brown like this. But the real diagnostic character is to look at the two tails. In Hydropsyche, they end in two little fan-shaped sets of gills, whereas in Rhyocophila, they end in hooks. So there's Hydropsyche, there's Rhyocophila. These will hatch in caddisflies sometime May through till September, October. This one is known as the sandfly. It's a little sandy brown coloured fly, occurs in vast shoals, flocks under the trees on summer evenings. This one, the adult fly, is usually a grey colour, often called a grey flag or grey sedge, sometimes a silver sedge. It's one of the grey caddisflies, so they're quite different when they're adult flies as well. Both of them important trout foods as both the larvae and as the adult. We've seen Hydropsyche and Rhyocophila, two caseless caddis, one of them Rhyocophila free living and one of them Hydropsyche that lives in little nets that it spins itself, rather like a spider. These are cased caddis, caddis that the larva has a little case, in this case of sand, to protect it from marauding trout and grayling. Some people do go on about the fact you can identify cased caddis to species according to the case. To some extent you can, but you've got to be careful because whatever is available for the caddis to make its case with depends on what the case is made of. So do be careful. Now I've collected some and put them in a little bowl so you can see what they're up to. You'll see them crawling around, the black legs stick out at the front, the black head. Many of our bugs, basic bugs, things like a Hersia goldhead is a caddis, a case caddis imitation, a very good one. But often in a flood these may get washed out, and what I'll do is I'll take the big fellow out of his case. When I put him back in the river later on, you'll see he'll build a new one, but I'll take him out of his case and then you can see what he looks like if he'd been washed out. pull him out, and you'll see that these things have hooks on the bodies that hold them in the case. They're very difficult to pull out, but he'll leave loose in a minute. Here he comes. Here he comes. Now, the pale bugs that we can tie imitate him. Notice that we use, say, a hare's ear thorax head. That's matched by that. And there we've got a pale body. And they come in all sorts of colours. So you could do cream to match this one, or a yellowish, or pale olive. All these abdomens that you can use. And then a hare's ear, or even a peacock herl thorax head. And there you matched a caddis that's been washed out of its case, or lost its case in a flood. Right, so here are some caddis, some case caddis. Here we've got the one I took out of its case, meandering across the bottom. When I put him in, he'll make himself a new case. But notice the sort of cream body, the dark thorax and head, dark legs, the sort of thing we imitate with a whole variety of bugs. All insects grow through molting, and they molt their outer case as they grow. Now, this is a bitis, has molted out, and there's left the old shuck behind. So that's the dead skin. It's rather like a little schoolboy having to have a new blazer bought him. Well, that's the old blazer, and the new one is a couple of sizes bigger, and now the bitis is growing into the new one. And it keeps molting and molting and molting and growing and growing and growing until eventually it reaches the stage where it's got black wing buds and it's getting ready to hatch, and the next molt will be the hatch into the dome. This is one which I've just got out of the bowl, and can you see the wing buds are quite black? Now that might hatch this afternoon into the large dark olive dome. That is ready for hatching. That has spent a year as a nymph in the river, and now it's going to hatch as a tiny mayfly called the large dark olive. One very important nymph in still waters, especially weedy still waters, are the damselfly nymphs. So this is a damselfly nymph which is 1 year old. Next year that will probably be 2 to 3 times as big and hatch out. And you might have noticed how it uses its abdomen to swim. Notice it's got 3 flat tails at the end of its abdomen. Those are gills, 3 pairs of legs, quite a large head and a long tapering body.